Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have Mr. Ashish Singhai with us as the expert speaker for this session. Mr. Singhai is currently General Manager for Technical Services at JK Cement Limited. He is heading the customer service for entire Central India operation area of JK White Cement. He holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Civil and postgraduate in Finance and Marketing Management. He holds a rich industry experience of more than 30 years in techno-commercial capacities of various MNC and national level organizations in cement, construction chemicals, and ready-mix concrete at various parts of India. He is also a life member of Indian Concrete Institute. He holds a keen interest in sustainable construction technologies, and for his knowledge and experiences, he has been asked to deliver the expert session at various educational institutes of India. With this brief introduction, I will invite Mr. Singhai to initiate his session.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sanchit, for inviting me. And on behalf, at the outset, I would like to, express my thanks and gratitude to Professor Sandeep, sir, for, bestowing this honor on me. And today, as the topic is, I start with the thing, it is industrial experiences of sustainable construction practices. So it is quite relevant in today's context. And as we are approaching towards a faster constructions, rapid urbanization, and a lot of industrial activities are going around. I think it is the high time for us, especially civil engineers and all the engineering fraternity at large, to focus on how to conserve, preserve, and increase the longevity of our natural resources. Because if the resources exist 50 years, 100 years, 200 years down the line, then only this rapid growth and constructions can remain sustainable. So on this premise and on this broad overview, I start my presentation. Yeah. So now, by definition, what do we mean by sustainable development? Sustainable development meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The meaning itself is quite clear. If we could successfully conserve the resources today, the future generations, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years down the line, they can very well make use of all these materials which exist today. So we need to devise the technologies. We need to develop that engineering, that skill, that intent, and in the very first place to conserve our natural resources, which are anyway in scarce. Maybe a couple of decades down the line, we may not have all these materials in as much quantity as we have today. So we need to have that kind of approach, that kind of intent. Not only the individuals, not only the government organizations, but the engineering fraternity as such need to put up their brains together and devise such technologies. So this is all about sustainable development. From the industrial experience, I have got so many things to tell in the successive slides. Sustainability has to be local. What does that mean? If we are procuring some material from far-fetched distances to make use in this particular place, the sustainability will no longer exist. So we need to explore the technology, the methodologies, and the engineering as such, wherein most of the local materials, local technology, and local manpower can be utilized. So that will elaborately fit into the sustainability criteria. The minute we start importing designs, technology, products, or materials, the environmental impact increases manifold. That very well defeats the purpose of the designing a green and sustainable building, or for that matter, any built environment. So largely sustainability is supported on three broad pillars. First and foremost is environment. So resource conservation, environmental protection, biodiversity preservation. Second is society. So what is our role towards society? Energy and food security, health services, and all those basic amenities. And obviously, without sustaining the economy, these two cannot work. Economy also plays its very, very important role. Cost efficiency, profitability, and growth valuation of services. Meaning thereby, if suppose we are constructing a building or for that matter any project, if proper design parameters are not put in place, if 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 the materials are brought from quite far fetched distances, possibly we may have a wonderful structure, we may have a beautiful architectural structure, but it will defeat the purpose of economy. So environment, society, and economy are the three basic pillars upon which the sustainability model works. So talking about sustainability and green development, what does it offer to us? Improve the quality of life, protection of the environment. For that, we need to use the industrial waste. I will elaborate more in the succeeding slides. Energy conservation, more of renewable energy like wind and solar. Obviously, and hydro also. As we all are quite aware that India is a power scarce country. Okay, there are so many areas in India still after the independence, more than 75 years of independence, proper 24 hours of electricity is still not ensured. So that poses a big, question on our own efficiency. What were the reasons? Have we worked on the alternate sources? Possibly not. But of late, under the present, Prime Minister Modi ji's guidance and his able wisdom, a lot of steps have already been taken, and I can see in last 2-3 years a lot of solar capacities have been developed of national and international level, and a lot of investments is being done in wind power. And obviously hydropower is something that India has always been rich, and we have been exporting or we have been supporting our this technology to our neighboring countries like Bhutan, Bangladesh, and other countries also. So the thrust sector should be conserve the energy. Let us have a less dependence on the artificial energy that is fossil fuel based, that is thermal power plant energy, and more on renewable energy. Then fourth point is waste reduction and recycling. This is now a very, very talked about topic. Why? Because India generates more than 550 million tons of construction and demolition waste. It is huge. It's mammoth. It's humongous. 550 million tons of construction and demolition waste, which is not properly utilized in India. Hardly 2 to 5% of this C&D waste is only, being converted to recyclable or reusable coarse and fine aggregates, and rest is just dumped, thrown as a waste in such areas which are maybe as a landfilling, maybe as something which will not be of any use for any community. So now the efforts are put in place. Government has become very, very conscious, not only from the national level, but at the same time at the municipal level also, across all the cities of India. And new technologies are coming up, new plants are being put up. Indian Concrete Institute, IGPC, and a lot of other agencies have put their brains together, and now waste reduction and recycling has become a very, very important subject. Efficient use of natural resources, we have already discussed. Better operational performance, that means using the new technology to improve the durability, cost, time, efficiency, and better productivity. Let us take the instance of cement industry. Currently, as per the BIS norms, 35% of the fly ash and about and roughly 65% of ground granulated blast furnace slag is being advised by Bureau of Indian Standards that can be replaced the limestone. Okay, that is the clinker. Can it be even improved further with better optimization of the resources, with better quality products from fly ash and GGBS, so that we can conserve our scarcely available limestone deposits for few more years, or for that matter for few more decades. In this context, I would like to mention about geopolymer concrete, which is still in its infancy stage, which is still in its R&D stage, But a lot of very good, efforts are being done. A lot of studies are going on global level as well as in India. Obviously, in some developed countries have gone a little ahead of us because they started this campaign on geopolymer concrete earlier to us. But now we have taken up this assignment as a very forefront kind of subject, and a lot of good organizations and a lot of public sector undertakings, like when we talk of NTPC, when we talk of AMPRI, and all such good organizations are working on it. And possibly going forward in next 3 to 5 years, we will be having more visibility on geopolymer concrete. So when the geopolymer concrete will be in place and which utilization catches the fancy, when its utilization improves in the normal day-to-day concrete production, possibly the dependence on the traditional cement, that is ordinary Portland cement or Portland slag cement or Portland pozzolana cement, shall reduce significantly, and that is going to be a very, very good step towards the conservation of our limestone. I'm just giving an instance. Okay. Now, talking about the sustainability in terms of green buildings. So we have to use more of green materials in the construction. What are the green materials? I will just elaborate in the succeeding slides. Optimizing the demand of electricity. Let us replace most of the electricity by virtue of solar, hydel, and wind power. Generate electricity and for the building purpose itself. Cater to all its water demand through sustainable processes such as rainwater harvesting, treating and recycling the wastewater of the site if possible. So now a green building very well treats the water which is generated out of its own utilization, and it can be put into use for gardening, car washing, and cleaning of the society areas. Secondly, rainwater harvesting has become almost compulsory in most of the areas. Government is also harping on that. I would like to elaborately mention about a very good example of Indore Municipal Corporation, which has mandated that every new construction shall have the permission for the construction only and only if they present the provision of rainwater harvesting system in their house. So such kind of encouraging steps or such kind of binding steps would only encourage the rainwater harvesting. And now, as we know that over the years there has been a considerable depletion of groundwater tables, which such type of steps will definitely help in conserving our water resource to a larger extent. Recycling and reusing of the waste which is generated at the site, so it can be put into use in the form of coarse aggregate and fine aggregates. Let us generate optimum waste. For that, you need to have a very good planning that you will call only as much material on the site which is required, so that we can reduce the waste generation significantly. Now, it's very important as to industrial impact of carbon emission by different sectors. As we are all concerned about greenhouse gases, as we are always concerned about the emission of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide gases, which are hazardous in nature, which go in the atmosphere, will deplete the our ozone layer, and thereby increasing the global warming after every passing year. As you must be going through the news and all this reading articles, that every year the global is getting warmed by couple of or maybe 0.5 or 0.7 degrees Celsius. Now just imagine the quantum of glaciers which are going to be melted out of this warming, and the study suggests that many countries which are lying along these glaciers or along these water bodies may not exist maybe a couple of decades down the line as the globe becomes warmer. So all these things have to be anticipated in advance. For that, we need to curtail the carbon emission by the industries, by the construction industry. How much carbon emission is being done by these different industries? Just a very glimpse of on that. I will not elaborate on this, but just a broad picture. Construction activities alone contribute to the extent of 35 to 40%. This is significant. Out of this, you would surprised to note that cement and steel industry globally put together contribute almost 15% of the carbon dioxide emission. So that's something huge, humongous. We need to see as to how carbon dioxide emission can be minimized or curtailed in these two major industries. Obviously, without cement and steel, there cannot be any construction activity, there cannot be any infrastructure activity, there cannot be any growth for the economy. But having said that, can we have some technology or some kind of system in place whereby we can minimize the carbon dioxide emission? So that is something that we all have to look into. Manufacturing industry, that means apart from cement and steel, other industries contribute almost 30%. So that also have to be looked into. Transport industry almost of the equal proportion, with majorly electric and solar vehicle can be a very good option to mitigate this transport contribution. And miscellaneous industry, apart from all these major three sectors, all other activities fall or maybe contribute towards 10% of carbon dioxide emission. Okay. On this note, Sanchit, I would like to ask, am I visible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are clearly audible. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, fine. And the screen is also
Yes,
right.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
Now, moving further, I would like to just give a brief introduction on embodied energy of building materials, which is known as EBE. So, what is embodied energy? Means for any material which we see in our proper, finish shape. Prior to that, if we just go from the starting point, the product from mining or extraction of the natural resources to the manufacturing process to the transportation to the product delivery. So all these different channels of any product manufacturing has energy contribution. Energy is definitely required from mining stage to manufacturing to transportation, and finally the product delivers to the end consumer. So all these different channels require energy, and this energy is inbuilt in that particular product known as embodied energy of the building material. Now, Indian affordable houses do not require much energy in operation, and maximum energy requirement is during the construction stage. So this line amply clarifies that we need to focus on the EBE of the product at the not only at the operation stage, but at the same time, it's procurement stage also. Buildings are largely responsible for 40% of global energy use and contribute towards 30% of the total carbon dioxide emission. Now, these two figures will give a very broad picture. 40% of the global energy contributed by buildings, and out of that, the contribution is 30%. CO2 contribution is about 30%. So we need to devise the technology for minimizing or mitigating the energy consumption and carbon dioxide emission. So what are the sustainable tools to the conservation of the energy? First is reusing the building materials instead of constructing the new ones. Reusing the buildings instead of constructing new ones. For that, renovation and reuse projects typically save about 50 to 75% of the embodied carbon emissions compared to constructing a new building. Instead of going for a new building, can we renovate or can we just make some corrections and make it useful for the existing buildings? That will typically save up to over 50% of the embodied carbon emission. Second point is specify low carbon concrete mixes. It is quite clear that if we make more use of fly ash, slag, and other secondary cementitious materials while producing a certain grade of concrete, then definitely as the quantum of cement is reduced, definitely the concrete becomes more greener, and it can be termed as a low carbon concrete mix. So such type of designs can be done. Third is limit carbon intensive materials. Now, what are the carbon intensive materials? Such materials which require high amount of carbon dioxide emission during its manufacturing process. For example, steel industry is there, cement is there, we have got aluminum, we have got copper, and such type of materials which require huge quantum of carbon dioxide emission during their manufacturing process can be reduced. This is what we need to think upon. So for products with high carbon footprints like aluminum, plastics, and foam insulation, thoughtful use is essential. We can minimize all these elements as far as possible in our construction. Fourth is reuse the materials. Wherever possible, look to salvage the materials like brick, metals, broken concrete, or wood. By doing that, we can, mitigate CO2 emission. Point is that use high recycled material. This is especially important with metals. Virgin steel, for example, can have an embodied carbon footprint that is 5 times greater than high recycled content steel. Now, something that we need to ponder on. High recycled content materials, that has to be a part of your project. That has to be part of your architecture. So, for example, take the instance of AAC blocks. Take the instance of fly ash bricks. Take the instance of recycled or reclaimed wood materials that can be used, put into use in your buildings. And by doing that, you can significantly mitigate carbon dioxide emission as far as your project is concerned. And using fewer finished materials. This way to do this is to use structural materials, good concrete as finished, minimize waste. Nowadays, we have got such beautiful quality of materials that can be used for your supportings or scaffolding. I can very well take the name of Maiwan shuttering. So Maiwan shuttering material gives such a beautiful finish to your structures or maybe to your concrete members that you need not to go for any kind of plastering. The finish itself is so bright, so clear, and so beautiful that plaster can be avoided. So we need to think about, we need to design such type of structural members which will not require much of a finishing material. And as the finishing material quantity goes down, obviously you have started mitigating the carbon dioxide footprint. And obviously we need to design such structures wherein the waste is minimized to the largest extent. This is the embodied energy content of few of the building materials which are prominently used. Just look at the steel. It is 32 megajoules per kg, very high. Cement 6.7 megajoules per kg, pretty high as such. Aluminum is almost 170. Paints 62. Plastic 90. So all these materials, when you look into and compare it with other materials like sand, obviously it's a natural resource, so low energy is required. Hollow concrete blocks 0.41, AC blocks 0.6, high fly ash 0.56. So just compare these materials with the materials that I have already mentioned. So there's a huge difference in embodied energy. So we need to have an optimum kind of a design wherein more such materials shall be put into use which have low EBE as compared to those which have high EBE. Nowadays, a lot of work is being done on net zero, that is decarbonized buildings. Now it is also one of climate change resolution which was passed in Paris. So I will just read it to you. There is a need to decarbonize, that is to bring net zero. I am talking about the carbon dioxide emissions, the world's built environment by 2050 to meet global climate change goals. CO2 emission must mitigate. Climate change, rapidly warming planet poses a significant threat to our planet. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is IPCC, by 2030, to reduce carbon emission to limit the overall temperature increases to below 2 degrees Celsius, which is in line with the Paris Agreement. So the basic agenda on this particular international platform is that all around efforts needed on the global platform to decarbonize or bringing the world to net zero carbon dioxide emission. That is possible only when all the economies, all the developed as well as developing economies come together on a common platform. They agree to the resolutions. They agree to all the requirements. They agree to all the initiatives to be taken. Then only we can have sustainability in terms of reducing significantly the carbon dioxide emission. Nowadays, what different methodologies are being worked out. Talking about civil engineers, green concrete has already been developed. What is green concrete? Green concrete is something where mineralizing the atmospheric carbon dioxide and injecting it into the concrete mix, thereby reducing the amount of cement required in building projects. So, as we say, cement has a high EBE, almost 6.7. Can we minimize cement content? Then strength will be affected, other durability parameters will be affected. Then still keeping that durability and strength intact, still if we can somehow reduce the cement, for that green concrete has come up as an option. It is still a very new technology wherein mineralizing the atmospheric carbon dioxide and injecting into the concrete mix, we can reduce some quantum of cement amount for that particular project. And what are the other environmental benefits to the green concrete? First is it has a very good durability. Energy consumption is significantly reduced, and obviously the basic purpose is significantly reducing the carbon dioxide emission. What are the advantages? The method of preparation of green concrete is same as conventional concrete. No rocket science. The same method we can use as a conventional concrete. Reduces environmental pollution, have very good thermal and acid resistance, reduces the consumption of cement overall, economical compared to conventional concrete, and having better workability than conventional concrete. So green concrete is going to be a future of the concrete. What are the other sustainable solutions from the industrial view that will make your structure greener, sustainable, and innovative? I have got these very number of solutions. I will start with the blended cement. Everybody knows blended cement is something where a lot of industrial waste can be put into use, and we can produce greener, sustainable, and economical concrete. So by using fly ash and GGBS. Now, when we use fly ash, it is a waste product of thermal power plants available in abundance. Heaps and heaps are being available across India, and there is no proper utilization up till few years back. Now it has picked up a very good momentum, and a lot of study and research is being done as to how to increase and improve the percentage of fly ash in manufacturing cement as well as in concrete. Similar is the case with ground granulated blast furnace slag, known as GGBS. Now, GGBS is again a waste product from the steel industries. Again, humongous amount of GGBS is available by virtue of these steel plants. And now the government has taken a lot of incentive to initiative and incentive to encourage utilization of fly ash and GGBS for manufacturing good quality of cement and concrete. Now, BIS already has a very good codes in place for both fly ash based and GGBS based cements. So I will elaborate a little further in the next slides. Translucent concrete, less artificial light required. Suppose if I am sitting in a hall, why to use the entire energy from the artificial electricity? Can we have some kind of technology wherein at least I can replace the artificial light by natural light. So translucent concrete has been designed. I will just take you through on the next slide. Pollution eating concrete, reduction in the pollutants. Aerated autoclave concrete, that is AC block. It is a 100% genuine green product. I will elaborate further. Manufacturing sand, a lot of options are available in sand. Crushed aggregate sand, manufactured sand, slag sand, copper smelter waste sand, and whatnot. So, and obviously, construction and demolition waste sand also is available. So that will all lead to the conservation of rivers and overall environment. Pervious concrete for rainwater recharge. And geopolymer concrete, as I mentioned a couple of while back, it is going to be the future of cement and concrete. So these are all available, secondary cementitious materials for significant reduction of the carbon emission: fly ash, slag, silica fume, metakaolin, and rice husk, which is essentially an agriculture waste. But if it can be, put in place as far as things are concerned, we can save significant amount of fossil fuel, that is coal. What are the environmental issues with OPC production? Every single ton of ordinary Portland cement production releases 0.9 tons of carbon dioxide gas in the environment. That is something very, very, strong statement. So as I mentioned, cement and steel industry alone are contributing 15% of carbon dioxide to the global environment. 15%, 1-5. Out of which 7% is contributed by cement industry itself. So we need to ponder on these two statistics very, very, heavily, and design strategies, methodologies, and engineering in such a way that we can have less dependence on all these materials, whereby we can mitigate the carbon dioxide emission. So that will be our support to the sustainability. As we all know that blended cements are far, far superior, far, far better as compared to ordinary Portland cement. Talking about comparison on strength, it has 15 to 30% better later strength. It has significant reduction of heat of hydrogen by 35%. So the cracks and all such things will not take place. It densifies your concrete by 60% more than the traditional OPC concrete. So the pore volume gets refined. It increases the water tightness by almost 30%. It has a better resistance to sulfate, chlorides, and alkali aggregate reaction. So these are the chemicals which affect and deteriorate your concrete quality in the long run. So if the cement which is being used for the concrete is blended cement, either it is PPC or either it is Portland slag cement or sulfate resisting cement, such cements will have a better resistance to protect from the attacks of sulfate, chloride, and alkali aggregate. So from a sustainability aspect, we can say that life of limestone increases by 30 to 50%, as across India we have got heaps of fly ash and slag utilized for better quality cement production. So now not only we are getting a better quality, durable, sustainable concrete, at the same time we are reducing the burden on these on our mother earth by utilizing these waste materials. And talking about the strength, durability, and the overall qualitative parameters of blended cement, I think there cannot be a better example than that. Burj Khalifa, which happens to be the world's tallest tower, which is in Dubai, has utilized more than 250,000 cubic meters of concrete, all prepared with blended cement. The other example is Twin Tower in Malaysia. That is also 100% concrete production was done by using blended cements. So now, what could be the environmental and sustainable impact of all these blended cement? The first thing is that we can reduce 650 million tons per annum of solid waste. That is fly ash. If we are using, so we can use this as we can reduce the overall burden of fly ash to the extent of 650 million tons. 800 million tons per annum of carbon dioxide emission can be reduced. This is what we are all talking about. 1,000 metric tons per annum of raw material can be saved in cement production annually, meaning thereby we can have longer life for our limestone reserves. And apart from that, icing on the cake, we have got higher performance cement and concrete. India is typically, blessed with 7,000 kilometers of coastal line. As on the top of your right hand side, you can see the blue dotted coastal line. It is in excess of 7,000 kilometers long. And as we all know that the coastal area are always susceptible and vulnerable for chloride and sulfate attacks. So they will essentially harm your embedded steel. So we need to go for such type of cements, for such type of areas wherein the impact of chloride attack and sulfate attack as well as the alkali aggregate reaction can be minimized to a larger extent. For such type of constructions in these coastal lines, we always recommend to go for Portland slag cement or Portland pozzolana cement. So that is all. That has all come out of our own studies, out of our own understanding, and the kind of years that we have witnessed the quality of such structures which were manufactured by which were constructed by using all these materials. If ordinary Portland cement is being used in in the concrete for such type of coastal area construction, whether it is pier or whether it is any kind of structure situated along the lines of these marines, you will see what kind of deterioration it can lead to. The concrete exposed to seawater in the tidal zone, the entire steel or the embedded reinforcement got rusted, exposed, spalling has taken place, and that particular structure or the particular pier or the structure is no longer serviceable. So we can get away with all these things by using right cement for the right constructions. Now, how to minimize dependence on artificial lighting? One architect from Hungary, Mr. Aron Losonzi, has developed a wonderful material by the name of translucent concrete, or in very simple language, we can say light transmitting concrete. Now, how does it take place? What he has done, he has used 96% of the fine aggregate and inserted optical fibers to the extent of 4%, and plus some good quality additives, fillers, and polymers. By combining all these things, he prepared one concrete where deliberately no coarse aggregate was being used. 96% was fine aggregate and 4% optical fiber plus good quality aggregate, fillers, and chemicals. By using that, the density that he could achieve was about 2,100 to 2,400 kg per cubic meter. But it was so light in weight, but at the same time, the optical fibers that were inserted within that concrete matrix, and when the light was emitted from one point from one side, it got transferred to the other side. 40% of visibility was there within that concrete element. So that was something which was very, very noble and which was very, very unique kind of design done by Mr. Aron Losonzi. The only limitation is that it is not a structural member. It can be used as a facade. It can be used as a building block for the buildings. Okay, for the green buildings, it's quite ideal and very aesthetical to look into. Just see, light is entered from one side and it is emitted from the other side, and in the without light, that is how it looks like. There's one girl. She is standing on the one side. Natural light, that is sunlight, is coming from the other side, and just see the amount of transparency, almost 60%. Few more pictures of that. So if we can use this kind of blocks in our buildings, especially those sun facing buildings, or maybe where the facade can be of larger size, we can very well ensure that the dependence on the natural light can be increased and artificial lighting can be significantly reduced, thereby reduction in overall electricity consumption bill also. Now, talking about pollution eating cement, a very noble and a very innovative kind of cement being developed by the Italian firm known as Italcementi. Coincidentally, I was working with this organization a couple of years back. Italcementi, they are world's third largest cement and building material manufacturers. What did they do? They mixed titanium oxide with normal cement plus few polymers and prepared one such cement, which has a wonderful quality of, converting the oxides, the polluting oxides, into they break the polluting oxides into oxygen plus nitrogen, and that can be easily washed. Now, when it can be used, uh, such type of structures which have hazardous chemicals where in the form of nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds, these pollutants have a tendency to settle on the top surfaces of your buildings, and they remain there for years together. They do not break, they cannot be wiped off easily. Now, if we just apply coat on the top surface of your building with this particular cement, the titanium oxide within that cement, in the presence of water and in the presence of sunlight, reacts with those nitrogen oxides and break them into nitrogen and oxides separately, and thereby it can be cleaned. It can be wiped very, very easily. So it has been also known as pollution eating cement. So it works on the principle of photocatalysis. Now, this picture will give you an ample idea. In the presence of sunlight, titanium oxide gets activated, which is available within the cement. It breaks the pollutants, that is nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds, into oxygen and the nitrogen separately, and they can be easily wiped off, or they can be easily cleaned with very simple methods, and we can no longer have that kind of deposition. One such building I can just show you. It is a mall or maybe a hotel building, or the front face of the hotel somewhere in France, wherein this particular cement paste was applied, and afterwards, no maintenance for more than a decade. Automatically, the sunlight in the presence of sunlight, titanium oxide gets activated. It breaks down the pollutants, and it can be easily, by just sprinkling the water, it can be wiped off. The only thing is that it's a very costly material, not available in India, but across the developing countries, or maybe the developed countries like France, you have got Germany, you've got Japan, and some parts of United States of America. This particular product is used extensively for the external facade pasting. A very sustainable concrete, pervious concrete, is nothing new. Most of the attendees might be aware of that, but it has become need of the hour in the context of continuous reduction or continuous depletion of our groundwater tables in many states of India. So pervious concrete is not a rocket science any longer now. It can very well be used. It can very well be manufactured with simple methods. Most of the ready-mix concrete manufacturers have this technology with them. 80% of the coarse aggregate, almost 5 to 7% of the fine aggregate, and cement is used to produce this particular concrete. It can allow 70 to 80% of the water to percolate, to pass through, as these pictures can very well exhibit. And what are the application areas? Pathways, footpaths, garden areas, parking areas, manhole covers, all such areas where the where the vehicle traffic is not there. You can lay the top surface with this type of pervious concrete and allow the storm water or the rainwater to percolate, to seep through and recharge your groundwater table. So advantages we can have, it is for green buildings, for the rainwater harvesting and water recharge. So pervious concrete has large volumes of interconnected voids, almost 15 to 35% of the voids. Now in typical concrete, BIS permits up to 1% of voids, but in this pervious concrete we have a very high percentage of almost 15 to 35% of voids, which are interconnected. It is made from cement, coarse aggregate, and water. Cement and the coarse aggregate put together about 95%, and then we have got some fillers, fine sand, as well as some polymers, and obviously water. It contains little or no sand, which results in porous structure, so that water passes easily. When used for paving, it can take in storm water at a rapid rate of 3 to 5 gallons per minute per square feet of surface area, which exceeds the flow rate needed to prevent runoff in most rain events. During the rains, as we are already in the rainy season, most of the water, unfortunately, in Indore city, most of the roads, most of the areas, and even to the extent of gardens also have been completely concretized. So wherever we have a glance, we do not see green pockets or the soft soil or the black water soil around. Wherever you go, whether it is within the colony or on the roads or along the roads, you will find paver blocks have been laid. A lot of concrete roads have been built. Even in smaller colonies also, you can see concrete roads are being built or the tar roads are being built. So there is no room for the rainwater to percolate down and penetrate and recharge the groundwater table. So in such scenario, that it is it is highly required, and I would request all the municipal authorities also to make it compulsory that every single house will have that kind of provision wherein some quantity of water can very well go inside and recharge the water table. So the storm water, when it has a certain speed, right? The rainwater has a certain speed, and it will just pass through the pockets or cavities if the particular cavity or the particular pocket of pervious concrete does not have enough perviousness or the voids. So pervious concrete is so designed that it can take in the storm water higher than the speed of the storm water itself. Now, a very big subject in the context of industrialization, urbanization, and river management. That is, when I talk about the river management, uh, as we see that most of the rivers are getting depleted, and few of the rivers have been completely become extinct. Now they are only confined on the books. We do not even have the glance. We do not even know whether that particular river had existed some years back. Why it has happened? It has happened because of enormous depletion, or I would say brutal mining of such type of river sand for many years, for many decades, and we have completely murdered these rivers. And unfortunately, it is still being done. And it has also become a matter of dispute between the sand mafia as well as the government agencies also. And we have been witnessing all such news time and again through our television or our newspaper. So it is a big concern for the government as on date. So why the rivers are dying? Simply because sand is continuously brutally explored, mined from these rivers, and there's no option to that. But nowadays, the construction industry has come up with a lot of options. The civil engineers have given a lot of solutions to the construction fraternity, construction industry, that instead of exploring the river sand, we can very well use these options to replace the river sand, which is not only conserve the river sand, at the same time it has a better technical qualitative features overall as compared to the river sand. So river sand is used in the construction for concrete and cement and mortar. More than 90% extracted from river banks and banks. Unlicensed extraction resulted in severe erosion of river beds and consequently damages to bridges and environment. The thing is that sand and coarse aggregate put together, contribute almost 75% of the concrete. So it is a very much a compulsory element to the concrete. But what are the options that we need to discuss? So what are the options alternatives to the sand? Crushed stone aggregate, or also known as M sand. We have got slag sand is now being used. I will give a few slides on that. Aggregates from demolition waste and recycled concrete aggregates. That is a very good topic to discuss upon. Industrial waste, especially pond ash, are a viable alternative. As we discussed in the previous slide, sand, the fly ash can be used for better quality cement and better quality concrete. But apart from that, pond ash can be used for as a replacement of sand or the aggregate. foundry waste, copper slag, ceramic waste, etc., or even to some extent in some countries like Hong Kong, they have experimented with glass waste also. So glass was reduced to 4.75 millimeter down sizes, and whereby they can use it as a fine aggregate also for limited type of applications. So all waste material, by virtue of these industrial outputs, can be put into use as either sand or coarse aggregate, and thereby we can reduce the burden on our Mother Earth. So moving on, talking about fly ash utilization in India. This slide just at the bottom, it's a good scenario that every passing year the percentage utilization of fly ash is increasing. Okay, from 13-14 it was 57%. It has grown up to 69% up till 2018-19. My data is up to this year only. So this is a good scenario actually, but we need to even increase the percentage even more. So for that, going to be responsible the government's incentives, the industries, especially the cement industry and block manufacturers, they need to come forward, and obviously government has to make certain amendments whereby the fly ash percentage can be increased in cement as well as in concrete. Nowadays we are talking about high volume fly ash concrete, wherein the fly ash percentage can be up to 50% also, subject to certain grades, subject to using some good quality plasticizers and polymers. So all these studies are going on. People have become conscious, and fly ash, which was a couple of decades back, used to be a burden on the earth, has now found its utilization, and now it is being sold. It is being now instead from a commodity. People have started branding it also, which is a very good it's a welcome scenario for our industry. So as the percentage of fly ash increases, definitely we have very good chance of ensuring sustainability. So cement industry is going to be the largest industry for effecting this fly ash utilization. So already industry is hell-bent. Currently it is 35% as per the Bureau of Indian Standards. If the percentage is allowed to be increased more, cement industry will take up this assignment. They will have their own research and development, and possibly going forward we can see high fly ash cement also. For maybe it could be used for plastering or masonry work, not necessarily for structural work. But as far as stipulation up to 35% is concerned, fly ash addition, it can be used for any kind of concrete structure of any grade. This is a map that very clearly gives you a picture. The blue dotted blocks, are the cement manufacturing clusters like Satna in Madhya Pradesh, Bilaspur in Chhattisgarh, Nalagunda in Andhra Pradesh, Yeraguntla in Andhra Pradesh, Gulbarga in Karnataka, Chandpur in Maharashtra, and Chanderia in Rajasthan. So these are all 7 big clusters known in India, where almost 70 to 80% of the cement is being manufactured. Now we need to focus on all this cement industry itself, and the connecting thermal power plants can have a good accessibility and connectivity with all these cement clusters. And if the cement industry itself takes up the assignment of utilization of fly ash in a larger way, possibly we can meet our targets earlier than expected. So this is, and likewise other industry like block manufacturers, or for that matter even geopolymer is also one industry where fly ash can be utilized. Sand is obviously another option. We all are aware of that. Coarse aggregates are further crushed and brought within 4.75 millimeter sieve sizes, and thereby it becomes useful to be used as a coarse fine aggregate. Now, as I said that government authorities have started advocating and they have started, specifying and promoting these alternate sources of sand. One case study from Hong Kong, not very much in India, but Hong Kong has taken up this study and they have used crushed waste glass to be used as fine aggregate. But the only thing is that the high collection and transportation cost, the cost of producing crushed waste glass is about $1,000 per ton is a concern. So something more, some more study and some more, modification needs to be done. Then only this crushed waste glass would be a viable option. But it is confined to Hong Kong only as of now. Slag sand, as I mentioned, that is going to change the scenario. In down south, a couple of manufacturers have already started manufacturing slag sand. Obviously, it is derived from the same ground granulated blast furnace slag. If it is powdered to fine levels, it can be used as a replacement of cement. If it is kept as a slightly coarser and up to 4.75 millimeter, it can be used as slag sand. And if it is kept on a little granular in size, above 4.75 millimeter, it can be used as a coarser aggregate or maybe partial replacement to the coarser aggregate. So slag sand is going to become a big game changer, specifically for those areas where the steel plants are situated nearby, so that that particular slag can be crushed to 4.75 millimeter down sizes, and it can be used as a sand. Now, the very positive thing is that it can be 100%. It can be used individually or in combination with river sand or in combination with crusher dust or M sand. So this combination can be utilized, but with a very basic intention to minimize the river sand utilization. A lot of studies have already been carried out, and by NCCBM has given mandated its use. And as you can see, different percentage levels of nature sand, M sand, this GGBS blast furnace slag, and then following below is combinations of this particular GGBS blast furnace slag with natural sand, with M sand and crusher dust. You find that the 7-day and 28-day strengths are found to be better when the this particular slag sand had 50% replacement. So that gives a very good idea, and we have got figures in place to go ahead with. NHAI, Delhi Metro Rail Corporation, they have all done their own studies and they have given the certificates that it can very well be used as a replacement or as a partial replacement to the river sand. Now talking about further industrial application on the sustainability. One very vivid example I can quote, and I always quote, is aerated autoclave concrete blocks. It has changed the perspective of blocks or the bricks in last 5-7 years in India specifically. Now, AC block is something which has only 20% of the cement and 80% recycled raw material. That is fly ash, gypsum, lime, alumina, and water. And only 20% is cement. So that makes an ideal green building material. So not only it is light in weight, but it is eco-friendly. It by using such type of block, you get the green building credit points. You're contributing towards reduction in the carbon dioxide emission. In all, you are supporting to the sustainability objective. So AC block is going to be the key building material that will support our sustainability objective. Its use light in weight, eco-friendly, fire resistance, thermal and sound insulation is very good. Less number of joints because it is quite large in volume. Dimensional accuracy because it is manufactured in plants. It is available in different sizes. It enables the builders to experiment with the sizes. All kinds of internal external walls it can be used for. Good for air conditioning buildings and fire rated insulation buildings also. So these are the different elements and the application areas. carbon and demolition waste, as I said, this has become a drive of the nation. And not only the central government, but state governments, and under the state government, municipal corporation have become alert. All the engineering departments of the state have become alert, and the focus is now on to, first and foremost, minimize the CND waste, and even if the CND waste is generated, how to make it to the useful, use, how to convert it for the useful applications in terms of fine aggregate, in some coarse aggregate, etc., etc. So a lot of efforts are being done. And what are the different type of CND waste? Obviously, apart from the concrete, we have got excavated material like soil, tiles, ceramic, bricks, asphalt, concrete, plaster, POP, glass, plastic, which is coming because of the pipes and conduits, etc. Then we've got metals like aluminum, steel, wood, etc., etc. So these are the different materials that we get in the form of CND waste. So it is classified in three broad categories. First is recycled concrete aggregate. Okay, as from maybe whenever a dam or a bridge or the flyover or when a concrete road is demolished, what we get is recycled concrete aggregate. Second is recycled aggregate, wherein any building or any commercial premises or any industrial thing is been demolished, we get recycled aggregate. Almost everything apart from concrete, like tiles, bricks, masonry, and asphalt, etc. And third one is LCAGG. What is LCAGG? Yeah. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what is the LCAG? Is leftover concrete aggregate. Ready-mix concrete plants deliver the concrete, and that particular concrete, some whatever is the leftover, or whenever the cleaning of the process is being done, some concrete is left as it is as a waste material. So when such type of concrete is aggregated, we find a huge quantity is already there. So that can also be put into use after breaking in the CND waste plants. So what is the current scenario in India? Almost 530 million tons per annum of CND waste is generated, and there's a huge opportunity for recycling it and converting it to useful products. This is a very, very common scenario that we quite often see all across whenever we go on roads. These are the, that is how our demolition waste is thrown just like that. Now, typical composition of CND waste, if we can just drill down to the percentage terms in material and what is the composition. So soil, sand, and gravel has a composition of 36%. Brick and masonry has almost 31% out of the total CND waste. But our interest is concrete, 23%, and brick and masonry 31%. So these are the two broad parameters where we put our focus into, and we try to recycle this particular quantity to useful products like coarse and fine aggregate. So even what are the initiatives taken by the Government of India or the BIS? BIS IS 383 is the main standard for coarse and fine aggregate for use in concrete, revised in January 2016, permits use of recycled aggregate up to 25% in plain concrete and 20% in reinforced concrete of M25 or lower grade, and up to 100% in lean concrete of grade less than M50. So it sums up everything. As far as the plain concrete is concerned, 25% can be replaced with recycled concrete. In case of RCC, up to M25, 20%, and if it is a PCC, it can be up to 100% replacement. So CND waste management and recycling is quite familiar nowadays. First is recycling of concrete and other CND waste. Then we have to look into the quality of concrete also. Reinforcement steel can also be extracted from the embedded items, and it can also be recycled and sent to the recycle steel plants. Recycling of CND waste takes place either at the site or it can be sent to a plant. Now, what are the guidelines on C&D waste? First and foremost, ban on landfilling. Up till now, people used to think and act, just fill the land wherever you find the space. So the first thing is that now it has been banned. Second point is segregate C&D waste at the source itself. Third point is recycling the C&D. Fourth point is develop the market for recycled products. Even if you have recycled the material, are there any takers? So government need to incentivize and government need to promote about R&D, about C&D waste. Then we have got to promote the deconstruction instead of just demolition. What is deconstruction? That is scientific and methodical demolition. One thing is that just blow it up. So you will have everything messed up at the demolition site. The second thing is could be deconstruction. That means try to plan the demolition in such a way that it is methodical, step by step, by extracting the maximum usable items out of the construction or the demolition activity. Then using the materials which have longer life. So when we are using the materials which have longer life, possibly the wastage can be minimized. So what are the different government agencies? As I mentioned, there is one BIS is already in place. C&D Waste Management Rule 2016. National Building Code also has specified guidelines. Ministry of Urban Development, Government of India 2012 has given very clear guidelines on that. BIS 2016, Indian Road Congress 2016, CPWD, NBCC. All these government and central government agencies have given clear mandate, very specific guidelines for utilization, promotion, and incentivization of C&D waste and its management. So I will not, ponder much on these slides. Just to have a look at CPWD and NBCC guidelines. So CPWD and NBCC have recommended use of recycled portions of C&D waste in their construction activities, or if the same is available within 100 kilometer periphery from the construction site. So it's a kind of encouragement. Looking at the Ministry of Urban Development, so they also have given a very clear guideline that every single city over population of 10 lakhs must have that facility in place to process, to convert C&D waste into meaningful items of coarse and fine aggregate. BIS has already is responsible for preparation of the code and practices and standards. Indian Road Congress is responsible for the concrete roads which are being built by NHAI and other agencies. So whenever demolition takes place, for whether it is concrete road or whether it is asphalt road, the demolished material generated out of such demolition can be put into effective utilization. Some very good initiatives already been taken place in India. One is under PPP, that is public-private partnership model by the Municipal Corporation of Delhi. There is a place called Burar where they have already put up a 500 tons waste material processing capacity, and it is functional. So whatever sand and coarse aggregate are being generated, it is being sold to block manufacturers, curb store manufacturers, tile manufacturers, etc. So they have got a wonderful model which is in place. It is working. The second example that can be vividly, see is the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation (BMC). They have also put up a plant at a place known as Deonar dumping ground, where the construction waste is recycled, and there they make tiles, bricks, and pure blocks. Gurgaon is also following the same system. In our Indore itself, Nagar Nigam Indore has already started collecting the construction and demolition waste, and it is being processed. And the sand, the coarse and fine aggregate generated out of that is being used for making blocks, and these blocks are being used for Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana and other government buildings, etc. Some recycling processes in other advanced countries. Germany is recycling up to 86% of C&D waste. Japan is almost 95% of the CND waste. India is in a very infancy stage. We are not even 10% now. So these are the different stages of demolition techniques. This is known as implosion. That is putting up, dynamite at selective points and then imploding it. And that is how this is a basic layout of a CND waste plant, which consists of construction waste is being collected, sent to the vacuum feeder, then jaw crusher, where the larger part can be crushed into smaller particles. There is the iron separator that will, by virtue of the magnetic force, they will collect that iron part, and it is separated and sent to the, recycle units. We have got impact pressure that gives a very good screening. We have got a vibrating screen, and finally we get this finished product. That is how a plant in Burari, Delhi looks like. Different stages: screening, washing, and this final output. You can see the aggregate of 10 to 20 millimeter. You can see aggregate of 3 to 10 millimeters. So different sizes can be screened and put into use as per the industry requirements. Blocks, curbs, bricks, dividers, paver blocks, etc. So this is the industrial application of CND waste. Now, how to reduce the CND waste? First and foremost, we need to plan in such a way that waste is not at all generated. Second, modular construction, that is precast construction. Third is, even if the waste is generated, let us reuse the waste. Fourth, designing for long serviceability, that is durable constructions. Open and flexible architecture layout, preserving the existing building fabric, that means renovation. And ready-mix concrete. So obviously, ready-mix concrete is a very good answer to traditional, in situ concrete. In case of in situ concrete, a lot of material is
Excuse me, sir.
wasted. Yeah.
Sir, there is some disturbance from others, from your side.
Yeah, Sanjit.
Yes, sir.
I think somebody is complaining about some sound noise disturbance. Can you just please fix that?
Sir,
Yes,
mute
sir.
your mic, sir.
Sir, I'm muting everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Singhai sir, please unmute yourself.
Okay, just a second.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Am I
Yes, sir.
muted?
No, sir. No, sir. It's working, sir.
It's working now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So now, and ready-mix concrete, as I said, that it is one of the best reply to traditional fast in situ concrete, wherein a lot of material like cement, sand, and aggregate is wasted. Not only that, there's very unmindful use of water also takes place, which is again a very costly resource. What are the challenges? Sustainable business model, government incentives and tax holidays. I'm talking about CND waste. Public demand, awareness, model countries to emulate. As I mentioned, Japan is using 95% of CND waste. Germany is using 84% of the CND waste. China is also very high on about 70%. In India, it is in a very infancy stage. I would say it is less than 5%. So we need to catch up all those developed countries in a big way. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is going to drive this particular campaign of green building materials and sustainability, enforcement by the Government of India rules and regulations, supporting codes, product research, and environmental impact study. So they all will contribute heavily for encouraging the CND waste to be used more and more. Very interestingly, yesterday only I was just reading Dainik Bhaskar and I saw, I was reading this Times of India and I saw a news that our Indore municipal that commissioner, she had imposed a fine of rupees 5,000 rupees on a building owner who threw CND waste in front of his own house, and as a penalty, he was asked to pay 5,000 rupees. So these are certain, you can say initiatives that the government has to speed up and gear up to, so that we are more encouraged to generate less of C&D waste, and even if it is generated, it is being put to the proper agencies, it is transferred to the proper plants and converted to meaningful resources like coarse and fine aggregates. I'll just skip a couple of slides which may not be relevant here. Okay, fine. Yeah, so this was what I was mentioning, that our own Indore city has, manufactured more than 30 lakhs bricks in last 3 years, and out of which they have generated a revenue of about 60 lakhs. So here the revenue generation is not the key objective. The key objective is to reduce or maybe reuse or recycle the C&D waste and converting it to meaningful aggregates. So this is something I thought, so I just took a picture and incorporated in this particular presentation. Now, I just come down to the summary, because the topic of the day was to how we can minimize the dependence on natural resources. How we can ensure the sustainability of our natural resources by virtue of industrial experiences. So a lot of industries, as I mentioned all through my this presentation, cement is going to be a key driver, steel industry is going to be a key driver, thermal power plant is going to be a key driver, or a lot of other industries like copper spending units are going to be a key driver, right? And obviously not to forget the construction industry. So all these industry put together, there is one industry which has the requirement of certain item. There is many other industries which have certain items which are quite wasteful to them, but it can very well be transferred, or it can very well be given to the other industries or other resources, wherein it can help in conservation of overall natural system. So that is how this kind of synergetic effort would only ensure the industrial sustainability. So to summarize it all, industrialization cannot be prevented, urbanization cannot be prevented. It is quite essential for the nation's drive and growth and prosperity. But the conservation of natural resources is equally important. Using industrial waste like fly ash, GGBS, copper waste, C&D, manufactured sand, slag sand, etc., and thereby conserving natural resources. Shifting towards renewable energy and less consumption on fossil fuel, that is coal. Innovate new methods, technologies, applications of fly ash, water reduction, thermal reduction, green concrete. And government needs support for increasing the percentage of fly ash and GGBS and concrete, so that our concrete becomes greener and our constructions become sustainable. So on this note, I would love to pledge here that let's make a sustainable and durable and greener world. So thank you very much for a very patient listening, and